Hello. Good morning, everyone. Our name is Daniela Šantak and Jan Urbancic, and we work in offensive security in CyberSec. In this talk, we want to discuss a challenge many people face when learning offensive security: the gap between knowing the theory and actually being able to break systems in real environments. We will look at how attackers actually approach systems, why traditional learning methods often fail, and how hands-on training environments can help develop real offensive security skills. We will also show a live short demonstration in a controlled lab environment to illustrate how attackers chain small weaknesses into meaningful compromises. Most real-world compromises do not happen because of a single critical vulnerability, but in penetration tests, we rarely find one magical exploit that immediately gives us full control of the environment. Instead, what we usually see are small weaknesses, perhaps legacy systems, misconfigurations, forgotten services, weak access controls. These things individually often appear low severity, but when attackers connect them together, they create a path to compromise. In many cases, what begins as a small configuration mistake can usually lead to complete domain compromise. Understanding how these paths form is one of the most important skills in cybersecurity. Today, there is an enormous amount of cybersecurity material. You can see for yourself. You have tutorials, write-ups, courses, certifications, CTF challenges like this one, and many people that actually understand the concepts, but when they enter a real environment during a penetration test, what we do in our job, something interesting happens. Things become messy. Systems are mostly undocumented, services behave unexpectedly, permissions are inconsistent, and suddenly this clean step-by-step learning experience that we have from tutorials and so on disappears. This is where many people struggle. They know the theory, but they haven't yet developed the attacker mindset required to navigate complex systems, environments. So traditional learning environments often focus on isolated vulnerabilities, but real infrastructures rarely behave like that. Instead, attackers must first enumerate everything, then analyze weak signals, combine those misconfigurations, and slowly build an attack chain. This process requires analytical thinking rather than simple memorization. And this is something that only develops through practice. A typical attack might look like this. When we start with the attack, the first thing we do is reconnaissance. Then we enumerate the services to understand the environment. Next, we identify an entry point and gain initial access. From there, we escalate privileges, harvest credentials, and move laterally. Step by step, we progress until we reach high-value systems, each phase building on the last. This is why attackers often succeed even when organizations patch vulnerabilities. Because the attack is not based on only one issue. It is actually based on the relationship between systems. During our recent penetration testings, we encountered several environments where the primary risks were not critical. There were not critical vulnerabilities. Instead, there were combinations, in our case, of legacy authentication mechanisms, misconfigured permissions, weak service configurations, and credential reuse, which is often a quite often case. Do you agree, Jean? Okay. None of these issues alone appear severe, but when combined, they create a clear path for attackers. This is why understanding attack chains is so important. Security failures rarely come, as I said, from one problem. To help you master these skills, we at CyberSec created CyberSec Academy, where we use controlled lab environments designed to simulate realistic infrastructures. So Jean, please feel free to show us the labs.
Okay, thank you, Daniela. So during this demonstration, we will simulate a real attacker compromising the internal environment hosted inside the CyberSec Academy lab. The attacker begins with limited network access and starts mapping the environment to understand available systems and services. The objective of this phase is to identify potential entry points and exposed resources that can be abused for further compromise. After gaining network presence, the attacker begins enumerating internal services. One of the first targets is SMB protocol, commonly used in Windows environments for file sharing and domain communication. Through SMB enumeration, the attacker identifies available network shares, accessible domain resources, potential misconfigurations. So every of these findings provide valuable information about the internal infrastructure. Information obtained from SMB shares may reveal sensitive files such as configuration scripts, backups, or credential artifacts. Attackers often leverage these discoveries to gain higher privilege inside the domain environment. This phase focuses on extracting useful data from accessible shares that may assist in moving deeper into the network. Once inside the environment, the attacker attempts to escalate privileges and compromise critical infrastructure. In this demonstration, we will exploit the ZeroLogon vulnerability to compromise the domain controller. This attack allows the attacker to manipulate the netlogon authentication process, reset the domain controller machine account password, and then gain the domain administrator level control. Okay, so if we go, just a second. Okay.
Jean, I will introduce what
we
will do.
Sure.
Yeah, of course. So, in cybersecurity, we often talk about hacking as a mysterious art. But in reality, it's a systematic process of 3 steps. First thing we have to do is to find the door. Then we test the handle. And if there's a vulnerability, we break the lock. Today we are going to show you how an attacker moves from a total stranger on a network to the king of the hill, using 3 tools and 1 devastating exploit called ZeroLogon. Step 1.
Yeah, okay. So we already start the nmap scan. This is the port scan, so we need to know with which ports we will dealing with. So we can see here 5388 SMB on 135 and 139 and 445. So clearly this is going for the Windows server like domain controller because of the Kerberos 88 protocol. Now we are moving to step 2.
Sorry, I forgot to explain what nmap is. I don't know if everyone knows nmap. Does anybody know it? Okay, I will explain it. Nmap is a digital flashlight. We actually shine with it across the dark room of a corporate network to see what's alive. And this is the first step we have to do. The second step is to test the handles. So now when we see the door, we check if it's locked. We will use NetExec. This is a Swiss Army knife of internal testing. It can take a single set of leaked credentials and try them against every computer on the network simultaneously. It's automated, it's fast, And it tells us exactly which machines have been pawned, have the pawned status on. But what if we have no credentials at all? That's where things get dangerous. Jean, continue, please.
Okay, so we will use netexec to see a little bit more information about, so we can see here the IP address, the host name, the version of the Windows server, and domain, and we can see here that signing is true, SMB version 1 is true, and null authentication is true. So what this means, we can, with the netexec, see if we can get some kind of access without the username or password. And with this plus, we can already see that we can probably see the shares. And here, this will print out all the shares without the username or password. And here is the share name, the permission we have, and some remark. And on this one, we can see that we have the share IT and the permissions read. So with the next step is SMB client, we can read the IT share documents or whatever is up there. So,
okay, so we will use SMB client. These tools lets us peek into shared folders. Sometimes people leave guest or anonymous access on, and we can just walk in and grab sensitive PDFs or spreadsheets without a password.
So we will now connect with the anonymous login to IT share, and login was successful. We can see the onboarding text file up there, and we can read it with more command. And we can see that we already grabbed the username and password, and of course the user flag. So we will copy and paste the flag into our academy. Let's validate this. Okay, this is correct one. So with the username and password, we will go to the next steps. So we can try again with netexec. So let's say it was, I think, j.smith, and password was welcome123, something like that. And we can see with netexec if this user can, if got some kind of domain access, and we can see that the status password is expired. So we have few things here. If we wanted to change his password, we could log in through RDP and change the password, or we find some kind of other, some other way to go. So now we go to the next step.
Yes,
yeah.
This one brings us to ZeroLogon. It's one of the most famous vulnerabilities in recent history. Usually, when you log into a Windows server, there's a complex cryptographic handshake. However, a flaw was discovered in the math between the handshake. An attacker can send a string of zeros instead of a real password. Because of a logic error in the encryption, there is a 1 in 256 chance that a string of zeros will be accepted as a perfect match. To a computer, those odds are a joke. In about 3 seconds, an attacker can bypass the password, talk to the domain controller, and tell it, my password is now blank. Just like that, the attacker becomes the domain admin. They now own every user account, every email, every file in the entire organization.
Okay, so we already see that this is vulnerable, but the other way how to find this, we know which Windows server is running, so it is 2016. If we just Google it out, the IE already tell us that the ZeroLogon is a critical vulnerability here in this Windows Server 2016
version, yes.
Yeah, in this version. So the next step would be to clone this repository from Dirk Jan Mollema, which is this one. So if you use this exploit, be very careful because the domain controller will crash. Well, not crash. The whole domain will fall down because the domain computer account changed the password, and those computers in the domain are replicated with this password. So we need to change then back to it.
They won't be able to access.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
So if we run this exploit, it's pretty simple. I have already cloned it, so we just do the Python CV. We just need the host name and the IP address, so we can run it. It will now be successful, and the next step is dumping all the credentials from the domain. Finding the password. Okay, we need to wait it.
As a hacker, usually you have to have a lot of patience, so.
Okay. Changing account password to empty string. Okay, so the exploit was completed. We have already tried if we can access without the password. If we try it now again, it should be successful with the green. Yeah, that is it. So what this means is we
harvested?
No, we deleted all the hash, the password. We null it, so we can now simply just do the in packet secrets dump without the password with the computer account machine, computer machine account. So without the password, we can now dump all the credentials probably, yeah, okay. So here we've got the domain administrator. We can try it now with netexec, let's say. So
this is the part I was talking before. This is the credential harvesting part, when you get all the credentials from the domain.
Okay, so now if the hash is correct, okay, if the hash is correct, it should be pound. Okay, so we've got the pound one, and simply we can just do everything, and we have control over the full domain, domain controller, so the full domain, and we can just put out the flag, print it out, or we can just grab the psexec and pass the hash, and it will be the same.
Okay.
So we just put in, so we've got who we are, sorry, anti-authority system, and if we do we've got full control over the domain controller like that. So
okay, that means that in under 5 minutes, as you saw, we went from knowing nothing to having total control of the domain. The lesson here isn't that the hackers are geniuses, sometimes they are, but it's that visibility and patching actually matters. Here, this case was the case of a version of Windows Server that was vulnerable to this attack. ZeroLogon was fixed by a single Windows update, yet it remains a threat to any network that hasn't stayed current. In the world of security, the best defense isn't a complex secret, it's simply keeping your doors locked and your software updated. Not always, because sometimes newer versions also have vulnerabilities that are yet unknown. To summarize, Real offensive security skills are developed through practice in realistic environments. Enumeration and analysis are often more important than tools. Most compromises result from chains of small weaknesses, not single critical vulnerabilities. Here was a case of one single, but in our cases, when we check systems, usually there are more than one, and with those together, we get a result that compromises the client. So perhaps most importantly, successful attackers develop a mindset focused on understanding systems rather than simply running exploits. If you want to put your skills into practice, we would like to invite you tomorrow to join us for the Iron Peak Penetration CTF Challenge. The challenge is designed around offensive security techniques, including reconnaissance and enumeration, web application exploitation, Linux privileges escalation, Active Directory attacks, Kerberos and credential abuse, lateral movement in internal networks, and ICS/OT security exploitation. So if you enjoy solving issues in complex systems, please come and try it. Thank you again, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions? Yeah?
Thank you. Are there any similar vulnerabilities on Windows Server 2019 or 22, like this similar which you presented?
Not on this case. Probably there should be like no pack, if you maybe know. No pack exploit. Something like that should be on the. It's really it should be updated, and it shouldn't work. But if it's not fully updated, this one should definitely work.
Any more questions? Yeah, okay.
So usually these kinds of offensive operations may take up to several weeks, right? In case
It depends
when yeah,
on
but
cases,
if you
yes.
get stuck, how do you usually proceed? Like, how do you get unstuck?
You mean in penetration testing?
Yeah, exactly.
We actually chain a lot of experiences because we don't have a single company to work with. So actually, with the years, you get the experiences, and we didn't meet a case by now that we couldn't solve. Usually we take a look what they found before, if we know it, or probably we also, if we are in cases that we don't know what to do, we actually try to contact people who work in those fields and get some more additional information to have a clue where to search.
And if the strategy, if you get stuck somewhere, just go back to enumeration, back to you missed something probably, and this is the real step to that you do the really good enumeration and then exploit. So this is if you get stuck, go back to enumeration. So that's it.
And maybe just another question: do you also use like social skills in your penetration testing, or do you rely mostly on technical expertise?
No, definitely the social skills too, because like phishing and everything.
Both, yes. Both.
Yeah, both, definitely. Because the human is always the biggest target, so yeah.
It's the critical factor, actually, yes. Sometimes it's, like I said in the talk, reused credentials, phishings, I don't know, forgotten services. This happens also often. They forget they have something
Forgotten
there.
APIs,
Yeah.
whatever. So yeah.
Because a company, we saw in our cases, there was a company that was founded 15 years ago, and when we met the CEO, he said, yes, I built this company 15 years ago, and we were laughing. Yeah, we saw it, because all the systems were from that year when the company has begun. So actually, it's more unpatched systems, human factor, and forgotten things.
Okay, thank you, Daniela and Jean. I think this is all the time we have for the questions. And if you have any more, then please find them after, maybe at lunch. Thank you.
Bye-bye.